Black hands set this table this morning. Crystal straight, pens inked, contracts squared. Then 5 minutes before a 500-milliliter signature, the CFO snapped, "Security, remove the housekeeper and her daughter." "This is a closed table." 2 guards moved. Nia didn't. "Don't sign," she said, planting her finger on the final page. The interpreter exhaled a bored smile. "Routine fee." A couple of suits chuckled the way people do when they'd rather not be corrected by a black child. Nia kept her voice level. "That Arabic line isn't a fee. It transfers voting shares if performance misses by 1%. She didn't look at them. She looked at the paper. The header's a different font. The margins don't match the set. The watermark runs the other direction. The page count skips and the staple has a fresh bite mark. Someone swapped this after your review. The investor's aide stopped smiling first. The CEO lowered the pen until the nib kissed marble. "Read it, out loud," he said, not to Nia, to the interpreter. The sentence came out exactly as written, transfer, trigger, surrender. The guards froze mid-step. The CFO's grin drained off his face like a bad investment. The CEO turned the pen sideways, a small refusal that sounded louder than any speech. "No one signs," he said. "Lock the binder, pull the earlier copy, and find who changed this page, and who told you to." The door clicked as security held it shut. And for the first time all day, the room understood whose voice had actually saved their money. Security kept moving because that's what rooms do when a black woman and her child are told they don't belong. The CFO didn't address Nia. He spoke over her to her mother. "Control your daughter or you'll be written up." The kind of threat that counts on fear to erase the truth. And when Nia repeated the warning, he switched tactics. "She can't read Arabic." The investor glanced at the interpreter. "Bias made the denial easy, but paper makes it hard." Nia traced the line again, calm. "Say it exactly as written." The interpreter stalled until the investor's aide read it aloud and the words matched Nia's. Still, the CFO tried to shrink the moment to manners and timing, tone policing instead of fact-checking, and ordered the guards to move them to the service corridor. That was the fracture, policy used like a door. The mother held her ground. "We're not touching the contract," she said, voice low. "We're protecting it." A junior analyst, black, 2 ranks below anyone who usually speaks, cleared her throat and backed Nia with a receipt no one could swat away. The document log showed a last-minute reprint of the addendum from a side office that wasn't cleared to touch deal pages. "Pull the camera," she added. Silence changed sides. The investor lifted a hand and the guards stopped. The CFO finally looked at Nia, not because he chose to, but because the evidence left him no other path. "Independent translator," the CEO said, "and compliance on this table now." Bias had tried to escort them out. The record walked them back in. The room tried one more time to silence the people who'd saved it. "Housekeeping can wait in the service hall," the CFO said. Not to the CEO, but past the mother, the kind of instruction that expects black women to vanish on command. And when Nia stayed put, he added, "We can't stall a $500 million closing on a child's hunch." Bias did the talking. Paper answered. Compliance rolled in a gray cart, and an independent court-certified translator joined by speaker. "Read the final line exactly," the CEO said. "No summaries. No context." The translator read it word for word. Transfer of voting shares upon a 1% miss. Immediate assignment of control. No fee, no ambiguity. The CFO tried the old trick. Talk over the black voices in the room. "Thank you, that's enough. We have our own interpreter," he said. Then to Nia, "You've done quite enough, sweetheart." The junior analyst who'd pulled the print log, also black, 2 ranks below anyone allowed to speak here, slid a laptop forward. "Addendum printed 15 minutes ago from side office C," she said, steady. "Badge access, your executive assistant. Camera shows a folder swap at the service entrance. The staple marks don't match the morning packet." The investor's aide looked like he'd aged a year in a minute. The housekeeper stood a little taller. She'd been told all day to move quietly around the important people, and now the record proved who'd actually protected the important thing. The CEO's gaze settled on the interpreter, then the CFO. "We are done pretending this is a misunderstanding," he said. "Lock the room. Everyone stays until we trace who ordered the swap." The CFO started to rise. "We don't detain staff. and the CEO cut him off without raising his voice. "We're not detaining staff. We're protecting them, and we're about to find out why the only people you tried to remove were the black ones." Compliance pulled the camera feed, and the room watched the swap happen in silence. The CFO's assistant at the service entrance handing a fresh folder to the interpreter, while a guard waved them through with the casual authority reserved for uniforms and suits. The same guard had stopped Nia and her mother there an hour earlier and sent them around for optics. That double standard joined the file. The CFO tried to bulldoze the moment the old way, "We cannot let a minor in housekeeping disrupt a closing," speaking over the mother like she was furniture, then rebranding Nia's correction as interference. The independent translator cut through with a calmer truth. The investor's brief aside to his interpreter, captured on the room mic, hadn't been "ignore the child." It was "verify the child." The interpreter's earlier summary was exposed as spin, and the metadata from the printer sealed the sequence. Addendum reprinted on the assistant's login. Timestamp 15 minutes before the meeting, tracked to a side office the CFO controls. He stood to leave. "I have another commitment," and the CEO's voice made the door smaller. "You're recused. Sit." The investor turned to the mother first, not last. "Your daughter protected both of us," he said, and asked compliance to take her statement on the record. The CFO tried one last tone police. "This isn't the place," and the CEO answered the racism out loud so it couldn't pretend to be policy. "It became her place when you tried to erase her." The card printer hummed. An incident report began with the line no one in that room would forget. Security was called on the only black people who told the truth. And then the next shoe lifted. If the clause in the term sheet links public misconduct to automatic penalties, what happens to a $500 million deal when bias isn't just witnessed, it's documented? Compliance read from the term sheet like it was a mirror. Any public humiliation or attempted removal of a participant or staff, when tied to a deal discussion, triggers an automatic pause, independent review, and penalties. The camera showed who got targeted, the only people asked to leave were black, and the print log showed who slipped the page. The CFO tried the oldest dodge, "Let's not make this about race." It was a disruption, while speaking over the mother again, but the tape answered him. His assistant handing the fresh folder through the service door, the guard waving them past while blocking the housekeeper, his own voice ordering staff to the corridor the moment the child spoke. The CEO didn't debate prejudice. He treated it as breach. "Escrow is frozen. Your access is suspended. Interpreter, your services are terminated pending investigation. Security takes statements from the housekeeper and her daughter first." Chairs were pulled up for the two people who had been told to stand outside, and the investor turned his mic toward Nia, not away from her. "You saved both sides," he said, which landed harder than any apology because it was finally spoken at the table. The CFO reached for a softer story, miscommunication, bad optics, a timing issue, and the CEO said what the record already proved. It wasn't timing. It was targeting. The incident report opened with a line that would follow the deal into every boardroom. Security was called on the only black voices telling the truth. The signature page went back into the binder, and the next step wasn't ceremony, it was an audit, and the cost of bias was about to be priced in. The next reflex wasn't to fix the contract. It was to shrink the people who saved it. HR pinged the housekeeper with a behavioral write-up the CFO drafted, minutes that called it a brief disruption by service staff, and a security memo suggested restricting service access during sensitive meetings, all the old tools used to push black witnesses out of the frame. Compliance caught each move in real time and stamped them what they were, retaliation, and rewrote the record so it couldn't be erased. Alert raised by Nia Williams, daughter of employee Angela Williams. Correction prevented unauthorized transfer of voting shares. The CFO tried a credit grab. Independent translation resolved the issue, but the recording answered him. The translator confirmed what Nia said first. He pivoted to manners, tone, timing, protocol, the usual tone police that punishes black people for speaking before it thanks them for saving the room. The CEO cut through with policy. Non-retaliation letters for Angela and Nia. Their statements entered first, paid time and counsel provided, and a standing order that any staff member may halt a signing to raise a risk without penalty. The investor faced Angela, not around her, and apologized on the record, which matters because racism prefers private whispers over public repair. When the CFO slid a confidentiality form across the table, compliance slid it back with a warning. No gags for the people you tried to silence. The contract stayed closed, the cameras kept rolling, and the company finally had to answer the hard question in daylight. Why did every instinct after the truth surfaced aim at the black voices that surfaced it? The board came up on speaker, and the first instinct was still to protect titles over truth. "We can't rebuild trust around a staff disturbance," the CFO said, so the CEO put the racism on record. It wasn't a disturbance. It was a black housekeeper and her daughter stopping a theft you tried to sign, then triggered the conduct covenant's penalties. Escrow frozen. CFO suspended pending termination for cause. Assistant fired for document tampering. Interpreter removed from the vendor list. Guard pulled from detail and retrained under a new rule that any employee can halt a signing without punishment. HR's write-up of the housekeeper was shredded on camera and replaced with a non-retaliation letter. Paid time and counsel while the investor turned his mic toward Angela and Nia. "Your courage protected both sides. Your voices belong at this table," and authorized a stipend and scholarship fund in Nia's name because repair must be public where harm was public. Bias tried to survive in the corners, memos about tone, protocol, optics, but compliance's forensic sweep pulled a harder truth. 3 previous print jobs of the same addendum from the same side office, same watermark, same margin drift, and an email that read, "Swap after lunch, housekeeping won't notice." The room went quiet the way rooms do when a scheme confesses its dependence on people it devalues. The CEO didn't raise his voice. "We're done with optics," he said. "Next is the audit, and it starts with whoever wrote that sentence." The audit didn't just count pages. It counted how black people were handled in that building. And the receipts lined up ugly and neat. Security memos that read, "Keep service staff out of sight during VIP meetings." HR emails translating complaints into tone. Issues. Calendar notes routing housekeeping. Through the freight elevator while executives walked their guests past spotless. Tables set by the same hands they'd asked to disappear. Angela's statement went first and unlocked others. A black barista told to pause the espresso machine, "So important people don't see you through the glass." A black analyst asked to wait outside her own briefing until the partners arrive, a black guard instructed to redirect. Staff if they linger near the conference wing. PR tried to sand it down to protocol. But the camera made it plain. The only people almost pushed out of a 500 mailer signing were the black woman who set the table and the black child who read the trap. The independent translator, now on the record, explained how fee became transfer in the interpreter's mouth. The vendor contract was terminated, not because of culture, but because accuracy is not optional. The investor insisted the repair name racism out loud. No euphemisms, no optics, and signed on to a new rule set. Dual translator verification, open access for any employee to halt a signing without penalty, and a dignity clause that binds capital to conduct with automatic remedies when bias is weaponized. The CEO posted the non-retaliation letters and raised wages for overnight staff on the same memo as the suspension notice, because respect without resources is still a performance. Angela and Nia were invited to speak at the policy briefing, not as a photo op, but as authors. And the line that landed hardest wasn't about money. It was Nia's. "You almost lost because you didn't want to hear a black girl tell you the truth." The board nodded for the cameras, but the story wasn't finished. Inside counsel still wanted a quiet resolution, and the email that ordered the swap hadn't yet named the person who told him to. The audit found the answer in minutes, because racism always leaves paperwork when it thinks the people it targets won't read it. A print log tied to the CFO's assistant, a hallway camera showing the fresh folder passed through the service entrance, and a chat thread where the CFO wrote, "Swap after lunch, use the softer line. Housekeeping won't notice." That last sentence hit the table harder than any number, because it named the bias that powered the scheme. Legal tried to sand it down to process failure. PR floated miscommunication, and a board member asked if they could resolve quietly without accusations, which is how rooms keep their mirrors clean while black people take the mess. The CEO refused the edit. This was an attempted control grab built on the assumption a black woman and her daughter could be moved out of the frame, he said on the record. The independent translator confirmed the clause exactly as Nia had read it. The vendor interpreter admitted to taking the reprinted page. The guard acknowledged, waving the folder through while blocking Angela earlier, for optics. Bias didn't stop when it was caught. It pivoted. The CFO offered to step aside gracefully if the company avoided the word racism and issued a joint statement calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding. The investor shook his head. "We will not sign money over a lie or bury the people who saved us," he said. Then proposed the conditions for any renegotiation: dual language verification, an open-door halt rule for any employee, a dignity clause with automatic penalties for discrimination, and the removal of everyone who tried to push the black witnesses out. Cameras kept rolling, and even as the emails and hallway clips made the truth undeniable, the old reflex showed up in whispers. Why was a child in the room? Couldn't she wait? The same questions that ask black people to be quiet after they've already saved the day. The CEO ended it clean. The deal moves only after accountability. We vote tomorrow, termination for cause, regulator referral, and the new clauses in writing. The pen that almost erased them stayed capped, and the room waited to see if power would finally say out loud what the record already had. By noon, the board voted 9-0. The CFO was terminated for cause. Bonuses clawed back. Documents and chat logs referred to regulators. The interpreter vendor delisted, and the guard reassigned after retraining under a new rule that any employee can halt a signing without punishment. The statement did not hide behind optics. It named what happened. A black housekeeper and her black daughter were almost pushed out of a $500 room for telling the truth. And the company's first repair is to stop making rooms like that. The CEO signed a dignity clause into every future deal. Automatic pause, dual translator verification, public incident log, non-retaliation with penalties, then handed the pen to Angela to countersign the policy she and Nia made necessary. HR's write-up was torn up on camera and replaced with a raise and a letter that begins, "You safeguarded this company." The investor apologized at the table, not the hallway, and announced a scholarship in Nia's name for students who study language and compliance because black children shouldn't have to save adults from their own contracts. But when they do, they will not be erased. PR wanted softer nouns. Compliance posted the footage anyway, so no one could retell it as a disturbance. And when a reporter asked why the company kept saying racism out loud, the CEO answered, "Because silence is how it almost worked." Angela stood, not at the back but beside the mic, and Nia read the first line of the new policy herself. If anyone is demeaned or removed because of who they are, the signing stops. Black hands set this table. Black voices saved it. From today forward, they sit at it, and the cost of ignoring them is written into the deal.